Well, hello and welcome. On this episode of our Action Coach Business Spotlight series, I'm beyond excited to be joined by Adam Payne, franchise owner and licensed home inspector, of Pillar to Post home inspections here in the Hickory area and the foothills. We'll talk about more about that. Adam, thanks so much for joining us. I hope that you're having a good day so far.
I am. Thanks for having me, Matt.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And your journey here with Pillar to Post home inspections been about 5 years now, if I'm not mistaken. Interested in hearing a bit more about your story and kind of what led you to Pillar to Post.
Yeah, so my career has been varied, we'll put it that way, right? I went into college starting as an engineering major and didn't end up finishing as an engineering major. But all along the way, I've had jobs turning wrenches. My stepdad was a custom home builder. My grandfather was a real estate investor, and he used to drag us to all these ratty real estate houses and say, "Hey, let's clean up this yard right quick. It'll be no big deal," and we'd be there all day. But been around
No
real
big deal
estate.
to him.
Yeah, right. No big deal to him for sure. But been around real estate and houses and all that kind of stuff and construction really most of my life, and ended up with a recreation degree, however that plays out. But even as I went into that career, I found myself being responsible for facilities, and I was the guy that got the call when something wasn't working right, or "Hey, Adam, somebody's complaining that they tripped and fell. Will you go take a look at that sidewalk and tell us what's going on?" And I'd be the point person for all that. That's just kind of the role I fell into. Got tired of working for elected officials because that's hard. Went into corporate America for a little while, and I found this niche that I'm really good at, where I can take. I was working in mechanical claims for a warranty administrator, right? And I found that I had a good knack for taking really complex mechanical things and talking to people who didn't know about it in a way that they understood. And also got tired of working in corporate America because that's hard too. Not that owning a business isn't, but I
Right.
sort of had that entrepreneurial itch, and I started looking into it. As a matter of fact, earlier today, I found a notebook that had a list of some of the franchises I had started looking into. It was really cool. And
Took you back.
oh man, we can talk about this later. It's the notebook that I grabbed to interview for my first hire. I was interviewing a guy today,
So
and
here's the first question of the podcast then. Sitting there now looking back at that notebook 5 years later, here's kind of a closing question, but we'll start with it.
no, let's do
The
it.
right decision?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So that's an affirmation by way of having a thoughtful process going into it. So you're looking through this notebook, you're kind of doing a discovery process, if you will, seeing what the options are.
Yep. Yep. And I found Pillar to Post. I found the franchise and started looking into it. And my wife and I had purchased a Pillar to Post home inspection for our first house in South Carolina. And I was like, "Oh yeah, we had a great experience with them. That brand was good. Like the guy did a good job. It was just a positive experience all around." Started digging into it, and I found out, oh, home inspecting is something that really plays to a lot of my personal skills, just as to start something from scratch. And then the franchise has so many good things that support the clients, and our real estate agent partners and all this. And here we are 5 years later.
Yeah, in 5 years, congratulations, by the way. 80% of small businesses don't make it to 5 years, unfortunately. And so that certainly is a testament of so many things. Let's talk about some of those while we have some time together now. As you look back over that 5-year journey, and kind of back to where you started with this vision, so many people have this huge vision of what business ownership, entrepreneurship, and self-employment for that matter is going to look like. And oftentimes it isn't quite what that vision looked like 5 years in. You're
Yeah.
right on the cusp of that 5-year mark. And looking back, what does that feel like as far as the journey? And are you where you had thought you would be, or just somewhere different?
Yeah, yes and no. That's a hard question to answer. There's on some levels, I mentioned that I'm getting ready to make my first hire, and that's where I wanted to be. I intended to be a business owner when I started this, and I had hoped that would happen, obviously, a lot earlier on. But what I didn't realize is how much growth I needed personally to get ready for that. Um, I think if 4 years ago Adam had a business that was ready to start hiring, I wouldn't. It's not only that I didn't know what I didn't know; it's that I didn't even know to go look for the things I didn't know. You know what I mean?
I
So
do.
the personal growth has been the thing that it's been rewarding in ways I can't explain. But it's also been necessary for me, for my business to get to where it is now, and hopefully being poised for growth for the next several years.
Yeah, knowing you the way I do, and that's one piece that I think a lot of those businesses, and I don't think I know it from working with business owners, that a lot of those businesses that don't make it that first 5 year cycle is really often due to a lack of self-awareness by the owner and or the investors of the business. And
Yeah.
so that observation you just made of self, if those listeners are looking for some nuggets of what it takes to be successful in business or in leadership, self-awareness is obviously paramount to that. And acknowledging that now equips you for the next 5 years to be beyond those expectations as we continue to go forward. Now, as you think about the 5 years, just for those that aren't as familiar with Pillar to Post as a franchise compared to the everyday home inspector that they can find just by searching the internet, there's countless options. What is the unique value of not just Pillar to Post, but specifically Pillar to Post of Hickory and Adam Payne that makes your business continue to see success and have some longevity?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the first things is I mentioned this earlier, but it sounds like I'm bragging, but I really don't say this to brag. But I found that just I have a natural skill set for being able to communicate about these things, and it's really important in the home inspection process. You want an inspector who can find all the things, but then present it in a way that's not going to terrify and scare all the clients away. Because in reality, if I go through any house and list every single defect, which is kind of the goal of a home inspector, right? If I list all the defects and then I just present a report that's written the way the state says to write it, well, then you might have a 50-page report that has, hey, you need an electrician for this, you need a plumber for this, you need a structural engineer for this, and it can be absolutely terrifying. So I think that point of contact with the client where we have that conversation and say, hey, look, let's talk about this giant report that you're going to get this afternoon before you just sit down at your desk and fall into tears because this house is in horrible shape. Let's have a realistic conversation about what this really is. A lot of the things that we find are really small. I always tell people about the receptacle covers. Like if an electrical receptacle is missing the little plastic cover, the way the state has us write that comment, it says receptacle cover in, I don't know, kitchen is missing. Contact a licensed electrician for repair for safety. Well, it's about $1.50 at Home Depot and, 30 seconds with a flathead screwdriver, you know? But I've also, all of a sudden, there's something that's a safety hazard and you need an electrical engineer or an electrician for it, right? So it's really important to be able to have that conversation. And that point of contact is one of the things that I've personally made it a point to really work on as a part of the process.
And so one of the problems that you solve there is kind of bringing simplicity to the complexity of all the things that get looked at and could potentially be wrong or in need of repair in a home. But it's not that simple. There's also categories of things. I think back to the days we owned the automotive shops, and it was basically, okay, is it a safety issue? Is it a repair but not safety? Or is it just a maintenance, right? And so your tactic there would change. But I think there's something unique in there about your role, and probably now as you're looking for team members, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But as you think about that space between typically, and many I think in business can relate to this, whether they're home inspectors or in a different industry, whereby they're between a referrer or a strategic partner that they have a relationship with that's vitally important to keep, and they have the client or the payer of said service, which could be the homeowner or could be in different people's businesses, an insurance company. I know you've got some experience and exposure to that in the family as well with, insurance claims. And so as you try to sit between those two, what are some of the techniques that you use to you mentioned this natural talent, but that skill's been developed. So as you think about just breaking it down to keep it simple and then sitting between, kind of a tough question here, I didn't realize it was going to be this big of a question.
That's right,
so part one of the question, to break it down so that it's simple, what does your toolkit, your technology, your systems, your approach, what does that look like for keeping it simple and understandable?
Yeah, this is where the franchise is supporting us in ways that I don't think none of my competitors, to my knowledge, are able to do these things. So as far as the technology is concerned, we offer virtual tours on all of our inspections. So every time I inspect a house, I'm shooting a 360-degree virtual tour of the whole thing to help the client visualize not just what the spaces look like and how they flow together, but also where in those spaces or in which room these defects are related, right? So The visual stuff. And then on top of that, the clients also really love it because, hey, I got something I can call my mom halfway across the country and show her the house that we're buying.
Sure.
So there's a lot of that. Also, we offer measured floor plans for our premium and prestige inspections. And
Mm-hmm.
when clients are looking for flooring quotes or painting quotes, they have a document they can send to a contractor without the contractor necessarily having to come out. And then by the same token, they can use that same thing to decide if, that goofy sofa that they bought in the 70s that they just are tied to and can't get rid of, is it going to fit on that weird wall in the house?
Based on the measurements and dimensions.
Right, based on measurements and dimensions. And
Okay.
but on top of that, we can generate repair estimates. We have a pillar to post home manual is a service where there's a company that I'll take as I inspect, and I do this with all inspections. I'll take a photo of data plates of all the appliances, kitchen appliances and mechanical appliances. And then there's a third-party service for my premium and prestige clients where they'll check for open recalls on those. They'll give them a source for PDFs of original owner's manuals and warranty
Nice.
literature,
Very
parts.
robust offer.
Very robust. The whole point is to ensure confident home ownership, right? Like that's our goal, and I think the franchise does a really good job of supporting us in that.
Okay. And I want to come back to the selection of franchise versus going out and independent. That's a
Yeah.
crossroads many, including myself, in chapters past have gone through. So I think you could offer some listeners a valuable insight there. But I think one thing I wanted to point out just in that unique value proposition, and it's so simple, but it's something that homeowners or any consumers looking for. And it does tie back to that self-awareness of a base of integrity, but just the simple fact that you communicate proactively. You're working with integrity, meaning if you say you're going to be there, you're going to be there. If you're going to be late, you're going to let the individual know, or if there's a conflict or something that comes up. And in today's trades, we try to boil the ocean and come up with that, $1 million idea. Let me say to the listeners right now, and hear me clearly, providing trustworthy, credible, dependable service is a unique value proposition in today's
Absolutely.
service industry. Just by doing what you said you were going to do, when you said you were going to do it, for the price point you said you were going to do it for, and to stand behind it is a unique value proposition in today's landscape. Would you disagree?
No, I wholeheartedly agree. I have a soapbox on that actually. I
So,
know I run into contractors all the time, GCs, roofers, electricians, plumbers, whatever. People are always asking me for referrals. And most of the time, what they want is somebody who's going to call them back. It's as simple as that. Call them back.
so I just want that to sink in with people for a minute, is just the simple state of do what you say you're going to do, when you said you were going to do it, how you said you were going to do it. And if it's not the quality that you expect of yourself, stand behind it. These are unique value propositions for any trades-based business that wants to break out and break through against their competition or in a new market. And don't have to overthink that. Now, from a systems and a brand awareness, obviously it's a highly competitive space out there, and it's hard to get in front of those people that would refer you if they knew you, but they need to know, like, and trust you first. Did that drive some of your decisions to go with Pillar to Post versus Adams Home Inspections, or what did that process look like
Yeah.
for you?
Oh, no, it absolutely did. Like I said, my wife and I had personal experience with the brand early on and had a really good experience with them.
That's right.
And so we had been exposed now the systems because that was, gosh, we bought that house in 2014, I think. And so I launched this in 2020. So,
Okay.
over
Stuck
six
with you.
years. Yeah, I remembered that experience for one, but also the technology and the end product, like what I produce for the clients now, is a lot different than what they produced even in 2014.
Okay.
But to have to learn the ins and outs and be licensed in North Carolina as a home inspector, which is a pretty stern process. But to go through the licensing process and launch a business, and on top of that, to be creating my own brand and my own marketing around that brand, all that from scratch when I really sat back and ran the numbers and tried to sort that out, it made so much more sense to go with the franchise.
So if you're out listening and you're looking to make a decision on go out, start from scratch with a kind of a proven service like a trades-based business, or the uh, entrepreneurial route with a franchise partner, probably some of the key considerations is what's the value of the franchise and what's the perception of the franchise. And then lastly, always kind of three legs to the stool, is what's the upfront cost, or the cost. And if that value outweighs the cost, then you have a strategy you might want to pursue. If it doesn't, or if the numbers don't work, then either continue looking. I personally used a franchise broker. You already had familiarity with the franchise, so you had some comfort with it. But a
Yep.
franchise broker is a good option to get to know kind of what you would be a good fit for, and then bring some brands and concepts to you. So, anything else on the franchising, just as far as nuggets or lessons learned from your vantage point, Adam, before we kind of switch gears a little bit?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. You always get a little pushback on franchise, like once you're up and running and, oh, that's the franchise guy, you get some of that. But at the end of the day, when I really step back and look at it, I've been able to focus on developing my product, my home inspection product, without having to reinvent the wheel for all the marketing stuff. It's been worth it. I have no regrets, and I'm a bit of a fanboy for our franchise. They've been fantastic.
There you go. Well, I believe in it as well. And so you're at the point, a really exciting point, where you've built a successful business and the demand has exceeded your capacity to be both operator, owner, and inspector. So, really exciting point whereby the team is growing. And so, as you've embarked on this journey, a little bit about just kind of the mental journey of that process,
Hmm.
thinking about evaluating, deciding, and then what you're looking for in team members as you continue to add to your organization.
Yeah, so the getting to the point where I'm ready to hire an inspector and coming to that realization was part of the thing. I've wanted that. I've wanted a team since I started this 5 years ago, but also I'm not going to do that at the sacrifice of the financial risk of hiring before I'm ready. I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to sink the company because I just want to hire somebody, right? And so the franchise has had some support around the markers, the indicators for being ready to hire. And the conversation is always, do I go to that marketing event or do I go inspect the house? And when you start having to make that distinction and that decision real often, well, then you need to really start crunching some numbers. And so I did, and I have. And a lot of my own growth this calendar year, just since January, has been around how I view the business's finances and how to evaluate that and how to look at profit and loss and break even points and break even plus or break even profit. I've heard it called different things.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that stuff. And so having a little bit better financial acumen, I guess, around that has helped me come to the decision that, hey, we really are ready to hire. And then, of course, right now we're at that point where I'm booked 2 weeks out and I'm losing business because I can't get to it in time for people to get it done before their due diligence. So that's kind of immediately how we got here.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm looking for somebody. And right now, what I want to do is hire somebody who can inspect houses part-time, about half-time or so, with the potential of it maybe growing maybe into a full-time position, hopefully sooner rather than later, or at least having that
Absolutely.
option. But the idea is for them to take some of this day-to-day inspecting off of my plate so that I can step back and do some of the marketing and relationship building and business development work that I've actually kind of come to enjoy here lately.
And be able to work on the business and not
Yes,
in it
that's
as
exactly right.
much, and then equip those on the team to have the experience that you've enjoyed so much over the last five
Yeah.
years while building it. And talk about the ability to really relate to and connect to your team as it does grow. One of those advantages, and it's not a must for every operator and owner, but to be able to relate to the fact that what you're expecting of them is nothing that you haven't done
Mm.
yourself, whether it be in the crawl space or in the attic or in the enter scenario here. So leading by example, been an honor to be able to work with you some through that and looking at, those key decisions and the timing of those, and really just having some clarity around the risks associated with each option. And I think that helps us to make some data-based decision, because the
Mhm.
emotion of it is what kind of gets us that hope, dream, and desire is what gets us to start thinking about it.
Yeah.
But we can get stuck in that kind of analysis paralysis if it just stays that, well, what do I think all up here is going to turn out, feel like, and calculate all the scenarios and situations. So by having a system to get that boiled down and into something
Mhm.
that you can, compartmentalize and get some reassurance around, I'm sure has been helpful in that process as you've described. So thanks for those insights, Adam. So with respect to kind of your service area, no, based in Hickory,
Mhm.
how far out does your pillar post team go?
Yeah, so I tell people often that I'm this is pillar to post of Hickory in the High Country. So
Okay.
we serve Boone and Blown Rock and Banner Elk and as far as West Jefferson and really all of that high country corner of the state. We also will work in Wilkesboro and Surrey and Stokes, and technically my marketing territory even includes Davie and Davidson counties, which is Lexington, Moxville, over that area. But I haven't really pressed into that part of my territory yet as far as chasing business over there, just because I haven't been equipped with manpower yet
To reach that far.
to
So
get that far.
deepening your impact and expanding your reach sounds like the focus for the remainder of 2025.
Yep.
And appreciate you having made the time to join us on this Business Spotlight episode. Think some key nuggets there that I hope our listeners have been able to take away is, starting with the end in mind, sitting down in partnership with the other key decision maker in the home, and really understanding what you're looking for and having a process to evaluate that. And you're at a really great point at that 5 years in to be able to look back and see that those success criteria and kind of what that needed to look like has helped shape this first 5 year lap, and feel confident that 5, 10 years from now, these things that we're talking about, it'll be kind of retrospection yet again to say, well, 5 years ago when you were looking to bring that first individual on, and what lessons have we learned? And there will be many, but continuing to be self-aware and staying with your ear to the ground to really know the pulse of your business and then your team will continue to serve you well and provide that solid foundation that you're inspecting for so many as they're making one of the biggest purchases of their life in a home. So if you're looking for a home inspector, if you're a realtor in the area that's not getting consistent results from the inspector that you're using, I would more than recommend reaching out to Adam Payne with Pillar to Post of Hickory and the High Country. Adam, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, there's a billion ways. My website, probably adampayne.pillartopost.com, is all the information is there. Agents can book me online. Our online booking has access to my real-time availability, which is a unique offer. So when they get that offer accepted at 8 p.m., they can just log in and see if I'm available right then. So
there you go.
That's usually the best way to get me, but I have phone numbers there and everything else as well.
Self-serve, right?
That's it.
Make it easy.
That's it.
And coming out of franchise myself, and you be with a franchise, I think I went into it with this mindset that the franchisor was going to be my only needed support structure. My personal journey, much I think like yours, has been that I've found that there's power in local support, whether that be by way of networking or even as some good counsel, sounding board, and guidance. Just a quick note, if you would, for those that are in the franchise space and maybe aren't getting the results, or they're not moving as fast and as lean as they want. Would you say there's value in having an objective source like an outside of the franchise business coach?
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. For me personally, Matt, I've been working with you, and when I got to the point where I knew my business was ready to take this next step into hiring, I really sat back and I looked at it, and having, at that point, 4.5 years of experience and seeing how things have been going and saying, well, if nothing else, it's worth a fresh set of eyes and a different perspective. Because just like I said, you don't know what you don't know, and sometimes you don't even know to look for what you don't know until somebody just asks you a simple question. And for me, Matt, you've been a great sounding board for that.
Thanks so much for sharing that with us, and just appreciate that opportunity to get to know each other a bit. I'm hopeful that this podcast will continue to make people aware of the high quality service that Pillar to Post, somewhat unrivaled, quite frankly, in the area, just as far as total offering. Continued success to you, and thank you again so much for your time today on our Business Spotlight podcast.
Hey, thank you, Matt. Thanks for having me.